Melanie.
Hey, Kristen. How are you?
I'm good. It's really fun to chat with you. I don't know if we've really chatted face to face before.
I don't think we have.
I
I was
know.
thinking about that today. I was like, for all these years that we followed each other and communicate on social media, I was
I
like, I don't know
know.
that we've ever had a real life conversation. Not
It's
face to
really
face, for
fun.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we were just chatting before I hit record that we have a shared experience of launching books in the middle of a pandemic.
Yes. Yes. It's super fun. It's
Real fun.
a great time. And don't you go
Yeah.
back and think of all the conversations you had with your publisher about when is a good time to launch the book? And I was really adamant that I was like, it needs to be spring of 2020 because I don't want the noise of the presidential
I
election.
said the
Like I'm
same
trying to beat
thing.
that whole thing
I
because I was like,
know.
because we all know the presidential election is going to be the craziest thing that's going to happen in
Right.
2020, right?
But listen, it remains to be seen.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah. I mean, that's at this point, I'm kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen next.
I
Like,
know.
so every day is like a new day. And then I think it's so my book is called On the Bright Side, which I'm like feels real off brand for 2020. Like,
Yeah,
hey,
we might need it.
yeah, maybe we need the bright side. Maybe
We
we
might
need the,
need the bright side.
yeah, yeah, maybe we
Yes.
need it. So if we can find it, and I'm like, what is the bright side at this point? Is it that an asteroid's hurtling to Earth? Is
I
that the bright side? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know either. I I really don't know.
I know.
It's been a real shit show
Yeah, it really has. It
so
really has.
far.
Well done, 2020. Well done.
And we're recording this and we this will be going live in a few weeks and Lord even knows what will happen between now and then.
Well, I feel like everything I've done, that was the thing is like it got to be where I was doing podcasts and stuff for the book thing. And you've probably been the same where we've done this disclaimer of like, we're
Yeah,
recording this weeks before. So
right.
like whatever terrible thing has just happened, we aren't
Right.
ignoring it. Like we just didn't
Right.
know that had happened yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Oh goodness.
I know.
All right. So we're each going to read a little section of our book
Okay.
and then we're going to chat.
Okay. Great. I'm in.
And I'm going to go first because I
Okay.
want to chat more about what you're talking about.
Okay.
But we did decide we were going to talk about something funny. We were not going to be serious.
Yeah.
Because maybe people need a little levity right now. I
Yes.
know I do. So I
Yes,
am
for
going to
sure.
be reading from Rage Against the Machine. I'm going to be reading from the chapter entitled "Asshole Parents,"
My God. Which,
which funny topic there too because we're both with Christian publishers.
yeah.
And there was a lot of conversation around whether or not I could have a chapter called Asshole Parents.
Could you say that? I'm impressed that they let you do it.
They did. Well, I'm with
Okay.
Convergent, so they're a little
Okay. You're a little edgier.
there's Nadia went before me
Okay.
and Jamie
Okay.
and Jamie Wright.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
paved my way.
Okay.
But
We've come a long
yes,
way from like when my first book came out in 2012, they were like, I don't know that you should refer to drinking a glass of wine. And it's, but
totally. And now it's like
yeah.
we don't care.
Yeah, we don't care.
Just say the
You
F
can,
word.
yeah, you can, whatever. If it sells books, we'll take it.
It's kind of true. All right, so this is a chapter about being an asshole parent, which is basically the concept. And I ended up doing a Instagram meme about it, but just that concept of, despite your best attempts, your children might really hate what you do the whole
Yeah.
time.
Most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah. And so I talk about developmentally ways that we're assholes to our children. We're big assholes when they're toddlers. We're just ruining their lives by not letting them play with electrical cords and power tools and trying to save them from their own demise.
Yeah. Why are you so terrible? Why
Yeah,
are
like
you so terrible,
monsters.
Kristen? Yeah.
Yeah. But then I also did write about the teenage years, which I'm in and you are in right now.
Yes.
So this is how we are assholes to our teenagers. Breathing and other abuses. If you have a teenager, you were probably an asshole to them from the minute the school day ended. Remember school, by
Yeah.
the way?
Those were good times.
Remember, it was a little dated. Remember school
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
they
I
went
know. It was
away
so fun.
to
Yeah.
school?
It was good. And we thought that was hard.
I know.
Yeah.
Did you pick them up within a visible sightline of their peers? Did you ask about their day? Did you put on music that you like, or worse, did you try to play music they like? Did you sing along or tap a hand on the steering wheel or slightly nod or in any way show yourself to be a human being? Ugh, just stop. No matter what you've been through, or what you've accomplished, or what you know, you will never understand their complex and entirely different and altogether unique angst. Please stop asking them so many questions. Please stop prying into their love lives. Please stop trying to act like you care, because obviously you don't even care at all. And don't even pretend like you have been through something similar or have some insight, because look at you. You clearly don't know. Also, please stop doing all of the following: making eye contact, breathing, dressing like you're trying to be young and cool, dressing like you're old, attempting to talk to them about crushes or life goals, not caring about them, cheering for them at a sporting event, not being there within 2 minutes after they call to say they're ready to leave when you live 15 minutes away, using memes or attempting to understand memes or simply saying the word meme, making a joke, trying to give them a hug, asking them to remove their earbuds at the dinner table, using words like lit and low-key and triggered, trying to take their photo, and walking next to them in public.
That is the truest thing I've ever heard in my whole life. Cosign on all of that. Oh my gosh.
Boy.
It's the most humbling thing. And I feel like I want to tell mine all the time, like, no, I'm fairly cool. I know you don't think I'm cool, but in a world, like, it could be so much worse.
Like, comparatively speaking.
Yes.
I'm pretty cool.
That's it.
Like, it could be a lot worse.
Yes, it could be so much worse. I picked her up from school, like back when we had school, for like a dentist appointment or something. I don't remember. And I turned on the side road, because our school, like, certain roads are one way. And I turned and she goes, "Mom, you're driving where everybody's leaving for lunch." And I finally, like, I snapped and I was like, everybody here has a mother. Like,
Everyone.
You are not alone.
Yeah.
They all have mothers, and they probably all think their mothers are terrible, but deal with it. Like, it's what you've got.
I mean, I was laughing like the first day of high school. My son leapt out of the car. Like leapt out before we were even like in the area.
Like, he needs out. He doesn't.
And my kids are also, I don't know about yours, mine are sure that I'm the most strict mother ever.
Oh, 100%.
Like, no one else has any confinement on what they do, apparently, except my kids.
Everybody else is running free all the time. Yeah.
They can just watch porn in the living room. They can do whatever they want, except for my kids.
You're so mean.
So mean.
It's like, I'm sorry. I want you to turn out like a productive member of society. I'm sorry.
Totally.
Sorry that I'm trying to help you.
Totally.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so do you want me to go?
Yes.
Okay. So mine is, so my book is on the bright side, and so each thing is a little thing about on the bright side. So this is the bright side of finding yourself in the middle, because you and I are the same, and that we are in that middle place of life with our teens. And so when I wrote this, I'm trying to think, I think my daughter at that time was probably going into her sophomore year of high school. Now she's a senior, I guess, technically, because the school year's over. So last summer, I drove to Dallas for a speaking event. Caroline came with me because I lured her with the promise that it could also be a shopping trip. Oh, and there goes my light. Hold on. This is very professional.
The light that your teenager did not break.
But my teenager did not break, but I'm 99% sure she did. Okay, so I also lured her with the promise that it could be a shopping trip, which is the universal love language of teen girls. She's also savvy enough to know that when I'm asked to speak at a ladies' brunch at church, there will most likely be good food involved, maybe even chocolate crepes. We rolled our luggage to the front reception desk to check into our hotel room for the night, and the desk clerk began to make conversation with us. She asked where we were from and then asked, "Why are y'all in town tonight?" "I'm speaking at a church event tomorrow," I said. "That's nice," she responded. "Do you write books as well?" I was surprised to know she knew those two things usually go hand in hand. I didn't know until after my first book was published that people make the assumption that if you write books, then you must be able to speak in public. And this has always felt like a bold assumption to me. Anyway, I told her that I did write books as well. And she replied, "Oh, I used to write books and travel and speak too. But then my kids went off to college and I didn't have anything to write or talk about anymore. And now I work here." It sent cold chills down my spine. Lord, have mercy on me, a writer who wants to continue to have things to write about. In fact, I barely made it to my hotel room before I texted my beloved literary agent and friend and said, "Please don't let me end up working the front desk at a mid-level hotel chain. not because there is one thing wrong with being a desk clerk at a hotel, but because as much as I complain about writing books, I want to keep doing it forever. And I don't want to go back to working in the corporate world in any capacity now that I know what it's like to have a job that allows me to be creative and do what I love. I am painfully aware that I got my start writing a mommy blog full of funny stories about my child who is now only 2 years away from leaving for college. And then what? Does anyone want to read a blog about dogs? Can you become a fashion blogger if all you ever wear are sweatpants and t-shirts? Can you write a healthy living blog if you eat Takis on a regular basis and consider a spoonful of peanut butter a healthy breakfast? It was just another reminder that I am in what feels like an odd middle place of life. I'm somewhere between young motherhood and the end of the years with a child at home. Beginnings are exciting and endings can be interesting because they usually signal the culmination of a journey or maybe a new beginning, but the middle just feels not great, Bob. I don't even think that at 47, I can actually say I'm middle-aged unless I'm being really optimistic about my lifespan. I look in the mirror and see skin that doesn't look like it used to, no matter how many products I use. The back of my thighs hurt my feelings. My metabolism is clearly trying to mock me as payback for how hard I made it work for the last 40 years. My hips hurt when I get out of bed in the morning, and my hormones don't even have the courtesy to let me know if we're having a bad day until it's too late. I snap at Caroline or Perry for turning on the heat in the house when it's only 37 degrees outside. Can you see your breast standing here in the living room? No? Then don't turn on the heat. I get in the car and I can't decide if I want to listen to Kono 101, the local oldie station that now plays songs I danced to at my senior prom, or if I want to turn on 96.1 for today's hits and learn the words to the newest Post Malone song in a sad attempt to impress Caroline, who will just roll her eyes anyway. The other day, we were in the car listening to her Spotify playlist, and a song came on, and I said casually, "Oh, is this Japanese denim?" And she said, "Yes." And she seemed so genuinely shocked and proud that I knew the song that I didn't have the heart to tell her it was only because I read it on the digital display on my car stereo. The thing no one tells you about growing older is that you don't necessarily feel any different than you ever did. I remember when my best friend Gully's mom moved Nina, her grandmother, into an assisted living home. She was 88 years old, and she complained about having to live with a bunch of old people. I laughed then, but I get it now. I got home from a meeting the other day and was describing who was there to Perry and said, it was really just a bunch of older middle-aged moms. And he looked at me and said, "You're an older middle-aged mom," which is just rude, but true.
Oh man, there's so much in there that resonates.
Right.
Do you ever have that experience of like seeing someone else and being like, am I that age? Am I their age? And then you're like, I am that age.
I am their age. I am their age. And it feels so different. Like I'm older, like my mom had me when she was 24 and I didn't have Caroline until she was 32. So like I'm older than my mom was. So it's really humbling when I look back and think, oh, my parents were like in their early 40s when they sent me to college. You know, and I thought they were ancient.
Totally.
And I'll turn 50. Like I'll send Caroline off to college and turn 50 all in the same week, which is going to be a week that I'm going to need to get away. I mean, I'm going to need some sort of therapy, but
right.
Yeah. But it is, you look and you're like, well, I'm not that old. And then you're like, oh no, I am that old.
Well, I had this weird experience where I watched The Bachelor. I mean, listen, and
me too. No shame.
And I'm watching it and I realized like, I'm the same age as some of these people's parents. Like when they do the hometown week, I'm like, I'm the age of the parents of the contestants.
Yes. Yes. And it's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, because I think the thing is, and I've always known this, and I remember my grandmother telling me this, is you really don't ever feel any different because you're still you.
Yeah.
And so I keep thinking like by this age, I was going to be so much like smarter or wiser or have so many more answers. And I'm like, and I don't. And that's so disappointing. Like I thought.
I know. Like I'm still just a mess and insecure.
Yeah.
You know what I'm waiting for? That thing everyone talks about where you just stop caring. I'm waiting for that.
Yeah.
That sounds liberating.
Yeah.
But I still care.
And no, I know. And I'm like, and maybe it's kind of good. I mean, you need to care a little, you know, I'm like, it's a slippery slope. I think if you get to where, I don't know, it's what keeps me trying to use face products and trying to do something about.
Well, I have fully told my children if I end up in assisted living that they are there weekly doing my eyebrows and chin hairs.
Yeah.
Like, listen, no one, Like, if I can't do it myself, no
Yeah.
one let it go.
No, do not. I mean, and I feel like during this like quarantine time, like I've done so much, like I did a whole like quarantine face peel. And
You
like I had to
did.
tell Perry and Caroline that I was like, do not mock me. Like my whole face is going to peel off and shed like a snake, but
Yes.
this is what I need to do. It's where I am. And this is a good time to do it. And now I bought this like LED, like red light that's supposed to help with
Ooh,
wrinkles. And so
yes.
I hold it, but it's like a wand. So I sit at night and it's just this. And they both just look at me and I'm like, I'm trying.
I'm
Just,
trying.
yeah, this is what
Yeah.
she's like, Mom, you look ridiculous. And I'm like, well, when I was 16 and had your skin, I didn't have to do this, but now I
No.
do. So,
I just did, before quarantine, I ddid a vampire facial, which
oh,
is
those look
where
intense.
it was disgusting.
Yeah.
You, it was like macro needling. And they
Yes.
put needles all around your face, and then they take your blood plasma
Oh my
out and put
gosh.
it back on your face. Listen, I do a self-care podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and 50% of my motivation is like, I'm just going to try a bunch of weird stuff
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
talk
I mean,
about it.
you have to. So do you think it
It's
worked?
research.
Yeah, it is research. Did you feel better after the vampire facial?
Yes, I felt
Okay.
better for like a month. Like my skin
Mm-hmm.
felt amazing, but then it went back.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just can't, I can't maintain vampire facials. Like, I don't
No.
have that lifestyle.
No, that's
I
the
mean,
whole
just
thing.
finding the time to do that in and of itself was like moving a mountain.
Yeah, that's it. It's just because now I'm like my skincare regimen, I swear, is like 12 different steps morning and night. And
I
I'm like, this
know.
is intense, you know? And there's
Yeah.
days because I've got like the new face thing. So I'm doing the micro
Hmm.
shock and then I've got my light that I'm doing and I'm my scrub and the whole, and I'm like, it feels like I compared it to, I'm like, it feels like I'm fighting at the Alamo is how it
I
feels.
know.
Like
It does.
I'm outnumbered. I I'm never going to survive it.
I'm just
And
holding on by a string. I'm still here.
and what am I going to do?
Oh
So
gosh. Well,
I know.
I mean, you have dipped your toes in the water of hair blogging at this point. I
I
mean,
did.
you're practically a hair blogger.
I mean, I really am. I
Yeah.
really am. I feel like they're very professional. If you watch them, it's almost like I'm a fashion blogger. No, this is the other humbling thing I think about when you have a book coming out is like I was really, you're trying to be on Instagram more and you're trying to
Hmm.
engage with your audience and you
Yes.
want people to know about your book and
Yes.
nobody really blogs anymore. So you're like, I'm on Instagram. And so I'm like doing all these like Instagram stories, like my book's coming out. And like basically people were like, we don't care. How do you do your hair?
Totally.
And I was like, okay, that feels right. And so I did a hair tutorial and I'm going to tell you that thing has been viewed, which today you may be like, why did she do a hair tutorial? But there were times that my hair looked good. And so I did it and I showed people like, this is how I get these waves and
Yes.
whatever. That thing has been viewed like 4 times as many times as anything I've said about my book.
Oh, I watched it in full. Took notes.
Thank you, Chris.
I did. I was like, what is she doing?
No. Like then I'd had like a messy bun one day where it was really, I mean,
Yes.
literally just throwing it up and people were like, oh my gosh, how do you do your bun? And I'm like, hey, y'all remember I have a book. Does anybody interested in buying my life's
Give
work?
the people what they want.
That's it. Like I give
You're an
up. I don't know.
experienced author with much to say.
Yeah.
They just want to know about your hair.
Yeah. It's just
But
the
you
hair
know
is really
what?
what matters.
I would really take that as a compliment.
Well, that's nice.
I mean, you know what? I think you're doing something right. I think you are a cool mom if people want to
Well,
know how you do your hair.
I'm trying. I mean, Caroline, nobody's more thrilled than your teenager when you get on your Instagram stories to show everybody how you do your hair. That's what
Do
everybody really
you
wants.
do you have friends of your daughter following you on your platforms?
I do.
Yeah,
I
that's
do.
weird,
Do
right?
you?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they're mortified. I mean,
Yeah.
I've even offered, I'm like, I'll go through and block them all. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
But it's such a
awkward.
weird, yeah. And you're kind of like, and I think about that. And like now I ask Caroline, and I have for years, like before I post anything about her,
Yeah.
I'm like, are you good with this? Like,
Yeah.
are you okay with this? Because the thing is too, like you have multiple kids, but for her, I can't just be like a child who will remain unnamed. She's my only child. So I'm
Yes.
like,
Yes.
you're in it. Like everybody knows who I'm talking about.
Yep.
But I do think about that every time I go to post something. I'm like, okay, her
Hmm.
friends are going to see this, and the people that she goes to school with are going to see this, and her teachers are going to see this. So it makes
Yeah.
you careful. which is probably good, because if I didn't have that, I would have zero filter at all. Like, I think
Yeah.
I would almost be prone to like tell everything if
Yes.
I didn't think people I actually knew and communicated with in real life were watching.
Well, it's funny because, I don't know if you felt like this when you were, when we were more blogging, but it was like, obviously I wanted people to read my blog, but I didn't
Yeah.
want people I knew to read my blog.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Like, I wanted like anonymous people to read it,
Yeah. But not,
but not like other moms at school.
that's the whole thing. And I felt like I was able to get it, because when did you start blogging? Because you were early.
Yeah, 2007, I think.
Okay. So I was like 2006-ish, like
Yeah.
end of 2006. And that's why, I mean, I called it Big Mama, which has followed me, but it was because Caroline was not even 3.
Yeah.
And so, when you start it and your kids are that little, you can tell everything.
Right.
And I didn't use my name. I mean, because that's
Yeah.
the internet was like super scary. So like
Yeah.
you didn't use your real name. You didn't know
Totally.
identifying details and all that stuff. But then when I remember when my first book, I think, came out in 2012.
Then you got to
And
give it
everybody
up.
kept saying, like, you've got
Yeah.
to, you need your real name on everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I was not prepared for that.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It is weird. And it's been an interesting journey because I feel like, when kids are little and you're talking about diaper blowouts or toddler tantrums, those are universal. Every child will experience that. And so when you're
Yeah.
talking about your child in those scenarios, it doesn't feel like you're revealing a lot about your child in specific.
Yes. Yes.
They're universal. But then as like they become teenagers, things are really personal.
Yeah.
And then it feels like I just really felt like I really have to guard stuff now.
Yeah.
And I feel like I shifted from talking as much about my own kid and experiences with my children and kind of shifted into like more talking about my experience as a mom as opposed to what was happening with them.
Yeah. And I think and to me, that's only fair, because it's like
Yeah.
it becomes their life and their stories. And so it's like now, and I think that's why so many of us, like, I mean, for me, I really quit blogging just because, I mean, I still do this Fashion Friday thing, but like by and large, I'm like, my day to day most of it is either way too boring because I have a teenager who's on her own all the time, or it's too personal. Like we can't talk about it. And it's stuff like I keep notes because I'm like, to me, it'll be stuff that I can write about later.
Right.
But I can't write about it while we're in the middle of it.
I feel that too.
Yeah. It's
I
like you have
absolutely
to
feel
let
that
them
too.
get through all their teen angst and all
Yes.
their stuff while they're dealing with it.
I agree. And then it's funny because then it's like you kind of have to, like with my book, and this was my first book, so I hadn't had that experience yet, like kind of talking through the whole book with my kids. Like, are you guys okay if I say this? Or are you okay with that? That was a weird experience too.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that people they know are going to read it. And it's like, you just don't want to put anything out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't need that additional heat as a parent.
Does your daughter read your books?
No, she's
Yeah.
no.
Well, it's really funny because I have 4 and 3 are completely uninterested.
Okay.
And then I have one child who really wanted to read it, and I kept putting it off because
one of the girls, I'm betting.
one of the girls, of course, my oldest daughter, who's a voracious reader.
Okay.
Like, wow. I mean, she probably, it might be that she wanted to read it because the libraries are still closed.
Yeah.
I don't know how flattering it is. Like, I think she was just that
something.
bored. Like, this is the only new book in the house. But I kept putting her off just because there's a chapter in there about divorce, and I think I was pretty chill, but I still was like, I don't know. And then I like went in her room the other night, and she's like hidden the book underneath her pillow. She's read the whole thing. I'm like, okay.
Well, now it's out. I know. I think she'll read them. I think she's read part of Sparkly Green Earrings, which was my first one, and it's all about her. So that held her interest. And then I told her like a couple of years ago, because I have a book, Nobody's Cuter Than You, that's all about female friendships. And she was kind of going through some friend stuff. And I said, maybe you ought to read. I said, this would be a good time. And she was like, yeah. So, okay.
Well,
she's not interested in that.
I also, when India was complaining about her lack of books, I was like, well, I have all these books. I'm like, come up to my room. I'm like, and I'm trying to sell her on Jen Hatmaker's book, your book. Like, I'm like, look at, like, I have all these books that I think they're really funny. I think you would like them. She was like, yeah, no.
No. not so much.
She's like, does anyone fall in love in them? Like,
Yeah. You're like, no, there's
is
no
there a teenage
dystopian
love triangle
society
in
where,
any of
which I get. Listen, that's my genre right there. Give me a good love story. But you're like, no, these are just books that may help you be a better person. I don't know, but heaven forbid, we don't want to do that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, as you are, you're talking about this middle space, and I feel that so much. Like, what do you think is next for you? Like, what do as you go, like, okay, my kid is launching,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
as we all need, every mother has to do this. We have to figure out our identity outside of being a mom,
Yeah.
because it's, I mean, unless we've done our job very poorly, we'll be
Yeah.
launching them.
Yes. Yeah.
They
That's
will
the goal. That's
they
the
will go
goal.
on to live without us. Like, what,
Yeah.
where do you feel like you're investing, or you're, putting your energy as you sort of walk?
To me, I feel like it's been that I've really been mindful of, and if you've read anything I write, like, I think because I have an only child and I had a real dysfunctional childhood. And so to me, it's like my home and my family and doing this has kind of been my priority. So I feel like I've turned down a lot of opportunities and a lot of things I could do in the name of, I don't want to miss soccer games right now. And I don't like being away from home right now.
Yeah.
And so I kind of look at this time where I'm like, this is going to be the new chapter where I am going to be free to
Yeah.
speak more and do more ministry stuff, and
Yeah.
and to write a book about, because I've thought so much about, there was this whole group of us that came up together that all wrote about the younger years, and I feel like it shed so much light on, this is what it's like to have a toddler, and these are the things I'm wrestling with and all that. But I'm like, there's not a whole lot to me that's been written about the empty nester years.
There's not.
There's not. And just that, to
Yeah.
me as women, like, I think if we view that as like, this is a new beginning, and we're in a season of our life where a lot of times, all of a sudden now we have the financial resources to do more, and we have the freedom to do more, we're
Yeah.
more settled, and where can we use that impact? And so
Yeah.
that to me is, I want to do that well. Like, I'm really figuring out ways that I can dial in, in my community and my church, and how to make a difference here at home, but also to be able to travel more and do more ministry and speaking and things like that, because I've got the time now,
Yeah.
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 So if we ever get past the pandemic, that's what I plan
Once,
to do.
In 10 years, when all of this is over, you can leave your house.
Yes, exactly. Then that's my plan. So what about you?
I mean, I kind of feel the same way, and I'm a ways away. I mean, my youngest is 11, so I still, but I do feel grateful that I've always, even, and I'm similar to you, and I also had a dysfunctional childhood, and have really tried to be intentional around being present. I was a pastor's kid. My dad traveled a ton, and I grew up in that sort of, well, it's the Lord's work, so you can't be upset that he's gone, or you hate Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so I have tried, like, I mean, like you, I've kind of, I don't know, honed in a little bit, but I'm really grateful, and I'm sure you feel the same way, that I have always kind of had my own thing, right? So
Yeah.
I've always kind of had my own identity, and I certainly didn't think it would be writing. When I started having kids, I was a therapist.
Yeah.
And I guess I just thought I'd be a therapist throughout everything. Yeah. And then I found, I don't know, like, I found that to be really difficult when I was bringing, Kembe home, and I had 4 little kids, and everybody had, like, a lot of emotional needs, and I was like, I can't take care of these people and these people.
Yeah.
But I feel glad that I have a thing, right?
Yeah.
And, like, I would give that encouragement to moms, like, have a thing.
Yeah.
Even if it's a small thing, have a thing.
Yeah.
It's yours.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that my best friend and I say that all the time. It's, I'm
Right?
like, our kids don't need us. There goes my light again. Like, our kids don't need us focusing on them 24/7. Like,
They
it's not
don't.
good for them, and it's not good for us,
They
because
don't.
I start to neurotic, and I worry about every little thing, and I'm trying to control every little thing. And it's like, I
Totally.
think it's so good as a woman. Like, you've got to have that thing
Yeah.
that I like. If you're a wife and a mom, that's great. And to me, it's funny, because, like, that's all I ever wanted to be. Like, I was not this, I didn't have these grand ambitions of whatever. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I
Yeah.
grew up. I mean, I was 40 when I finally wrote a book and was like, oh, this
Yeah.
turns out this is what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
But I never had that thing. So but you look and once that happens, you're like, but you still need that thing that's yours, because to me it reminds you of the girl that you've always been. Like, what are your
Yes.
hopes and dreams and
Yeah.
your feelings and your thoughts? And I just think it's so important to stay connected to that, because I think ultimately it makes your marriage better. I think it makes
Yeah.
you a better mom. I think it's good for your kids. I mean, I know
Yes.
you're like me with daughters. It's like, I want her to see, like, this is what it's like to pursue your dream and to do
Yep.
something that means something to you. And
Yep.
that's where you're going to be happy, is like figuring out what is that thing that God has for you and doing it, you know?
Totally.
So,
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that, because I wrote about that in the book too, just that I think we do a disservice to our kids when we put this feeling on them that they're our everything,
yeah.
because I think it's a lot of pressure, for one, because then you kind of feel like, well, I guess I'm emotionally caretaking for my mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Only thing in life is me.
Yeah.
But I also think that when our kids think that all we do is kind of lay in wait for them, like when when we are their butlers, like,
Yes.
what do you need? Do you
Here
need
I
me to watch a
am.
cartwheel? Do you need me to, I have no things happening. I'm just waiting for you.
Yeah.
I just don't think that serves well in teaching them empathy, because I think empathy is understanding that the other people around you have their own thoughts and feelings, right?
Yeah.
And their
Yeah.
own experiences. And so to me, a part of even building empathy is showing my kids, like, I have needs too. Like,
Yeah.
like right now, I'm not going to put the code in for your video game because I haven't eaten yet and I'm going to pee. And those are my physical needs.
Yes. 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 And it's going to make them better people to
Right.
learn that because I think that's part of the parenting balance, is you want to take care of them, but you also need them to know the world doesn't revolve around them.
Yes.
And it's like, sometimes you have to wait, and
Yeah.
this isn't about you right now, you
Yes.
know? So
Yes. I
yeah.
totally think that's important.
It's and I think, it's interesting, because I had something happen with Caroline a couple of months ago, and it was back when she was in school. And, your kids never acknowledge that they think you're necessarily doing a good job, or that they're paying attention to anything you do. But she had this interaction, and she came home and she was just telling it at the dinner table, like a story. Like, she was like, oh, today. And she goes, I was in this class and this guy just made some comment to me and just said, well, your mom's just a basic soccer mom. He said, she just drives her car and has her part, whatever, and was kind of whatever. And she goes, and I looked at him and I said, you don't know anything about my mom. My mom's a badass author. Like, she travels around and she's worked her butt off. And I was like, oh, you don't know that you're validating me right now? Because
Totally.
otherwise you probably wouldn't be doing it. But it was that thing of like,
you noticed.
Exactly. Because she never really, like, she'll be like, that's great, Mom, that your new book came out today. But like, my family is not a real big, they keep me real grounded, like they're like, and so it was so validating in that moment of like, oh, she is paying attention. Like, I don't think she's paying attention, but
they are.
They're paying attention.
Yeah, they are. Although, yes, speaking of grounding, I have to tell you what my daughter said about, she read the foreword of my book, and I wrote it to my kids. In the midst of the sarcasm, I hope this reads as a love letter to the adventure of being your mom. It's been the best ride of my life. My daughter read that, and she goes, deadpan, get a life, Mom. That was her response to me dedicating my first book to her.
Your
Get
heart
a life.
and soul. And you're like, you're my whole heart and soul walking around in human form. Like, I just...
Yes.
God.
She's like, oh, God.
Gross. I know. And you're like, I know. Caroline, I think my new book is dedicated to she and Perry, and I don't think either one of them have even read the dedication. I don't think they even know. Like, no. I really don't. And I'm like, I'm just going to kind of wait and see if they don't. Like,
totally.
But she said there was one night at dinner, and this has been years ago, but we were sitting and she was talking about some friend of hers at school, and that distantly she was related to the Wright brothers, and this whole thing. And she was sitting there and she goes, are we related to anybody that's famous? And Perry like kind of pointed his fork at me. He goes, your mom. And she said, who are you related to that's famous? It made me laugh because I don't think I'm famous, but it is that thing of kind of like, she was like she couldn't even fathom, like, well, what has Mom done that's anything? And
totally.
Like, okay, all right.
Well, my kids are like, so now that you've written a book, are you going to be on like Jimmy Fallon? And I was like, well, think Jimmy Fallon has authors really on, and I'm not a celebrity.
No.
And then they were like, well, he's had the lady who wrote Harry Potter. And I'm like,
well, yeah.
I will not be
No.
I will not be as famous as her.
No.
And they were just kind of like, oh.
Yeah. Chances are there's not going to be like a Rage Against the Minivan theme park. I don't mean to burst your bubble, but that's the kind of the equivalent of, I've told this story before, but when my first book came out, and my publisher called me like 2 weeks later and was like, congratulations, you hit the New York Times. And I was like, oh my gosh. And like, I was like freaking out. Perry was out in the backyard, and I was like, oh my gosh, like book hit the New York Times. And I mean, we were like celebrating and like popping champagne. And it was this whole thing of like, we are set. And like 2 weeks later, we got the actual sales numbers. And I never will forget, Perry looked at me, he goes, so not a lot of people read books. And I was like,
it's so true.
I was like, yeah, pretty much. I was like, it was so like you picture like this.
He's like, so it's a real low bar. Doesn't take much, huh?
Yeah. Because before you don't know what that means. Like you're like, well,
it seems like a really big deal.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh no, this is not a lot of people read. That's the whole, and guess what? Even less people read now than read in 2012. So there's that.
They do. Yes. They
Every
do.
year. Yeah. Thanks, Netflix.
Thanks, Netflix and the pandemic and and Instagram. I think people read Instagram now.
Yeah,
I think
pretty
that's
much
their books.
I mean, I know. And listen, I'm guilty of it. I can't even
too.
judge because I'm like, there's so many nights where I'm like, all I have the bandwidth for are Instagram stories. Like
it's
I can't do anything else, which I hate, but it's just, I guess it's just where we are.
The number of books I read in the pandemic is 0.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Because I was just so stressed.
Yeah, and I kept ordering them off of Amazon. Like maybe this will be the book that'll change it. Yeah. And now I've just got this stack of books that I haven't read. So.
Me too.
Yeah, maybe someday I'll read again.
I know. But anyway, I mean, everyone should buy our books.
Yeah, for sure. If you're going to read a book, one of ours is really where you should start.
I mean, none of us read books anymore, LOL, but you should definitely buy ours.
Yes. Worst marketing ever.
I know. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if there's anything more mortifying than marketing a book. I will. I mean,
it's the worst. It's the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And you're in the same boat as me. It's like when mine started to come out, it was like right when all the coronavirus stuff was happening. And you're like, buy my book. It's called On the Bright Side. You're like, this is ridiculous.
Totally.
And then now we're in the middle of just one of the greatest crises to me our country has ever known.
Yeah.
You know, with the killing of George Floyd and the riots and everything else.
It's terrible.
Like the whole world feels like it's on fire.
Totally.
And it does feel like, okay, would you like to buy my book?
Right, I mean, buy my humor memoir.
Yeah.
Totally.
But sometimes we need a distraction. Sometimes it's good to come up for air because that to me is what over the weekend I was like, by Sunday night, I was like, I've got to unplug a little bit. Like I've got to like, and not to be unaware and not to put my head in the sand, but just to catch a breath, like just to catch a breath.
Well, I mean, the act of unplugging indicates that you have been engaged.
Yeah.
And watching and, in the first place. But I've been experiencing some of the same stuff. Like, okay, I'm watching this all unfold to the point that my stomach is hurting.
Yes.
Like I'm actually feeling physically sick.
Yes.
And and then if I'm not well for my kids, then I'm not.
Yeah. And then you quit sleeping and then you're like, well, now everything's worse because now I'm sleep deprived and I'm feeling all these things and I don't know what to do with it. And, on top of, I mean, it's like I told my daughter the other night, I said, it's like we had locked everybody up for, 2 or 3 months. And I said, and then it's like, I said, essentially it's like we spilled gasoline and then we've lit a match on it. I said, because everybody was so angry and frustrated anyway.
Absolutely.
And it's too much to process. So it's like
so much.
You've still got to take care of yourself in the midst of all that. So
yes,
it's tough.
It is tough. All right. Well, speaking of self-care, because I do a self-care podcast.
Yes.
What has been maybe 2 things that have been self-care saving graces for you recently? What are, anything, a candle, a book, a practice?
Yeah. I think for me, my 2 biggest things, number 1 is we have 2 dogs. I write about them a lot in my books. They actually have their own children's book. But taking them, and we have these nature trails back behind our house. And I feel like during all of this, like thank God that if a pandemic had to hit, it hit in the springtime when the weather was nice in Texas, because I'm in
Yes.
Texas. And so just being able to take the dogs and just go on these long walks through the nature trails and just get
Totally.
out and breathe
Yep.
fresh air and feel
Yes.
normal. And there were so many, like, it was so nice because there were so many neighbors that were out walking.
Yeah.
You know, that even though everybody's social distancing and all that stuff,
Yeah.
it was just that sense of community of we're all here, we're all
Totally.
going to get by. Like,
Yep.
so
Sun
that
is
was,
still shining.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Like there's, you know, it just was a little sense of normalcy in the midst of something that felt so not normal.
Yeah.
And that was a good place for me to kind of get out my stress and to pray and to just think. So that's one thing. And then if I'm totally honest, I'm going to say vodka and Topo Chico is the other. I mean, that's,
Dude.
I mean, I'm just going to say,
yeah.
when you're home all day, like I would look at the clock and I'd be like, ding, it's 5 o'clock. Like it's time. It's
Totally.
okay.
Yeah.
And just I needed something that felt, it was almost like it was like celebratory to make it through another day, which I know sounds
I get that.
but like it just felt like something that was a shift.
A marker, like a little
Yes.
marker of like, yes, it's we're shifting the evening.
Yes. And
as
so
these
it
days
became
bleed together.
Yes. And I learned the vodka and Topo Chico. It's always been a drink that I've liked, but to me, I was watching Real Housewives of New York, which is where I get so much of my knowledge. And one of them mentioned that her doctor had told her it was just better to stick to all clear alcohol and not wine for the calorie count. And so I felt like I was doing something good for myself, but I was also trying to do it in a healthy way.
You were being healthy.
That's exactly right.
I mean, you were following doctor's advice.
That's right.
Of a doctor on Real Housewives.
Yeah, which is really the best medical source.
It is. You know, what's weird is I live in Orange County, and many of my doctors have been on that show. It's really awkward. Like, I had my nose rotor rooted out this year.
Oh my gosh.
For my sinuses. I didn't do anything fancy with my nose. It was all internal, but he was like in the waiting room. It's just like on a loop his time on the show. I'm like, oh.
Okay. Yeah, that's a weird reality. We don't have Real Housewives of San Antonio, so we don't really have that going on.
Give it time. You never know.
Yeah, I know. Eventually. Maybe someday. Maybe someday.
Well, we're joking about our books, but I do think your book is hilarious. It is positive. It is a nice, bright spot in a dark time, and I highly recommend it. And where can people find you online?
So really the best place to find me these days is on Instagram. It's where I am, and it's just Melanie Shankle. But that tends to be where I post and where I do stories and kind of anything that's going on with me. So,
awesome.
And I'm so excited about your book. I love, a humor memoir is my favorite. That'll be the thing that it's going to get me to read, because like if there's a genre that I love, it's like, that's it. Like I want to hear about real life. And if you can write it in a way that makes me laugh, which you do, I'm like sold. That's what I want. Thank you. Well, you're getting one in the mail soon. I can't wait. I'm super excited. If I can package these things up myself. To UPS. That's the fun. That's the other fun thing about the pandemic. Like normally, like someone else would put those together and mail them for you at the publishing house. Now it's like, hey kids, guess what we're doing tonight? We're going to fill envelopes. Yeah. It's what you've always dreamed of. Yes. This is your mom's marketing team. Thank you. Yeah. Makes you even cooler. All right. Well, it was so good to chat with you. It's good to talk to you too. Thanks, Kristen.